As all of you know, water is present in the atmosphere in various forms. In vapor form, in the upper atmosphere, in the solid form, in the form of ice and snow, in the gaseous form, of course, in the atmosphere, as I told, and in the liquid form, in this form of surface water and groundwater. Actually, the total water potential, if you take, majority of fresh water is the groundwater itself. So, as persons who are interested in the water resources and hydraulics, we must consider not only the management of surface waters, but also groundwaters. In fact, groundwater is more important for us because the availability of surface water is subjected to the rains. So only whenever there are rains, the surface water will be available. So during all the period when there is no surface water, we have to depend upon the groundwater itself for any purpose, whether it is for drinking or for agriculture or for industrial supplies. So therefore, it is very important for us, for all hydraulics and water resource engineers, to learn about groundwater systems and groundwater flow and groundwater hydraulics. So therefore, that is the reason why we take up this groundwater engineering as a core subject, not as an elective subject. It's a core subject. So here, there are two things. See, one is always the availability, and the second is the demand. So, availability means the sources, and the demand means the requirements. So, the demand is to be managed, managed depending upon the available sources. So, we will therefore have to talk about the potential, that is the source, and the potential quantity of groundwater available. So, various aspects related to the sources. Then, of course, we should talk about the management. So, in the management, there are again two things. One is estimation of the quantity that is available, and then the other is how best we can tap that water. That means the devices which are required for exploring or exploitation of the groundwater. So how do we explore or exploit the groundwater? How do we get the groundwater onto the surface? With the help of wells. So therefore we will study about various aspects of wells and well hydraulics. Then, as in the case of any other scientific development, when any particular knowledge is either overused or misused, it will lead to environmental imbalance. So therefore, we have to always prevent the environmental imbalance. So ecological imbalance. We have to maintain ecological balance. So that means we should know what happens if that groundwater is contaminated. So why it should be get contaminated, how it gets contaminated, and what best we can do to protect the groundwater from getting contaminated. So that is the next part of our study. Then, as you know, there is availability of groundwater. Now that groundwater is available, globally, because there is no lines drawn like on the surface between two different states or two different regions or two different localities. Under the ground. Under the ground, everything is continuous as long as it is separated by an ocean. So therefore, even ocean also has got earth under it. So all the earth, all the globe is connected from one point to the other point. All points are connected. So water will flow in the ground almost universally. So that means that universally or globally available water, managing that, it is a difficult thing for us. So what we have to do is, we have to identify certain pockets or certain substrata. As we have catchment and subcatchments, here also we have strata and substrata. So local, regional and local groundwater sources. So how best we can manage them so that the best utility is always achieved. So therefore, how to study or the study we should study about the groundwater management in the form of local and regional requirements. Then, for doing all these things, we have to solve some mathematical equations only. So therefore, we should know how best we can solve those mathematical equations, or in other words, due to the availability of fast computing systems like computers, we have certain models or software developed. So with the help of that software, we can also assess the quantity of water that is available in a particular strata, in a particular region, local region, and how best it can be managed. So for that, we require an understanding of various groundwater models. So we will be studying these 5 aspects in this particular course. So as you see, Unit 1 deals with the introductory part, and then the role of groundwater in hydrological cycle, groundwater bearing formations, classification of aquifers, flow and storage characteristics of aquifers, Darcy's law, and anisotropy and heterogeneity. So what are they? We will understand. Then we will consider the groundwater governing equations. There are called as Dupuit and Forchheimer assumptions for developing the groundwater equations. So we will derive a general differential equation for governing groundwater flow, and we will also see what are the analytical solutions available. Then we go for the wells and well hydraulics. So we consider about various types of wells, the construction and steady and unsteady state solutions for the groundwater flow in the well, and unconfined and leaky aquifers, then effect of boundaries, images, image well theory, interference of wells, well losses, pumping and recovery test analysis. The third chapter is a very big chapter, and in fact, the syllabus when it is drafted, I do not know. They should have divided it into 2 parts. But anyhow, now it can't be done. Let it be like that only. Then coming to the 4th unit, the groundwater conservation, then regional groundwater budget, resource assessment, and estimation of recharge, Indian practice for artificial recharge. Then groundwater quality, contamination of groundwater, sources of contamination, remedial and preventive measures for reducing the pollution, and seawater intrusion into the coastal aquifers. If you consider the region which is close to the ocean, sea, they will be affected with the flow from ocean to the surface waters whenever there is a high tide. So during high tide, which is called as a diurnal tide, so the water will be entering from the ocean to the river. So therefore, the concentration of salt, that is salinity, will be more in the case of uh, groundwater intrusion, salt water intrusion. So we will study about that. Then lastly, in Unit 5, we consider the groundwater flow modeling, role of models, and then there is one called as the Helisha model, and there is analog models and a numerical modeling, so the boundary conditions, planning of groundwater development and constraints. So optimal groundwater development. So this is the overall syllabus. Now the textbooks that are available or prescribed are in fact these are the things. Todd and Mace, groundwater hydrology. Then H.M. Raghunath, groundwater hydrology. Then Introduction to Groundwater by Squarge and Huao Zhang. And then Handbook of Groundwater by Jacques Deluer, and Groundwater Assessment, Development and Management by K.R. Karanth. So these are the books. So this is the syllabus of first unit. Role of groundwater in hydrologic cycle, groundwater bearing in formations, classification of aquifers, flow and storage characteristics of aquifers, Darcy's law. Now, the total groundwater potential is estimated to be 1/3 capacity of the oceans. So, all the oceans put together, if you consider as X, 1/3 of X will be groundwater quantity. What is the source of groundwater? The source of groundwater is anyhow precipitation only. Whenever there is a rainfall, then all the water which stands on the surface of earth will percolate. After the flow starts in the form of surface water and joins the nearest channel or the river. And some water may get intercepted by the tall buildings and leaves of trees and get back to the ocean's atmospheric vapor storage in the form of evaporation. And some of the water which reaches the ground also sometimes, without flowing or without getting retained in the groundwater, will reach back the ocean's, the atmosphere's vapor storage in the form of transpiration. So the transpiration is nothing but the groundwater taken by the plants for their growth and amount that they have let out. After meeting the plant's requirement, certain water will be let out. So it flows in the form of it reaches the atmosphere in the form of a vapor. So that is called as the groundwater, percolated water or groundwater. Evaporation and transpiration. Evapotranspiration. They are both combined. There will be some evaporation and there will be some transpiration. So after meeting that evaporation, transpiration, the precipitated water will reach the ground and it will be retained in the ground. Sometimes even seawater enters the ground. when along the coast where hydraulic gradient slope downward in an inland direction. Sometimes, whenever there is a high tide, I told, so whenever there is a high tide in the river, in the ocean, the water will be flowing back to the uh, stream, and from stream or river, it again percolates down to groundwater. So that is also possible. Then another source of groundwater is, apart from your precipitation, the other is artificial recharge. So artificial recharge means what? Normally, whenever there is precipitation, after meeting the requirements, it will go down. Now, what we can also do is, we can collect the water and prevent it from getting either directly evaporated or transpirated, but we can make that water flow into the ground in the form of uh, artificial recharge. So we can allow the water to enter into the ground forcibly. So that is called as artificial recharge. So artificial recharge also occurs from excessive irrigation. Whenever there is excessive irrigation, you will get artificial recharge. Canal seepage. Whenever the flow takes place in the canals, so due to the construction or the material used for the canal, if it is uh, having uh, porosity or pores, so it will be flowing and uh, it will get recharged. So then, here is the statistics. The fresh water is only 4.04%. Oceans and seas have got 1.4 into 10 to the power of 9 cubic meters of water. Out of that, 4.04 is 4.04% is fresh water. So all the remaining 95.96%, it is salt water. 95.96% is salt water. Only 4.04% is fresh water. And where do you have this freshwater source? The freshwater sources are glaciers and polar ice. So in the poles and in the glaciers. Glacier means huge blocks of ice which get accumulated in the rivers in the cold regions. So glaciers and polar ice, out of this 4.04%, it is 2.97%. And some in the atmosphere will be there, it is only 0.201%. 0.201%. And lakes and rivers. So we have not considered the amount of water that is stored in the local streams and rivers. So if we take that amount into consideration, that is 0.009 percent, 1.27 into 10 to the power of 5 cubic meters. Then coming to the underground water, it is 1.05%. And then biosphere means water that is contained in the plants, that is 2 into 10 to the power of 3 cubic meters. So we cannot the 2 into 10 to the power of 3, or we cannot get that 1 point. We cannot get that 2 into 10 to the power of 3 because it is in the biosphere. So we have only 1.05% of the water in the form of fresh water. So you can see, if you add all these quantities, this and this, and subtract from this, we will get this. Right. So here I am showing the components of groundwater. Now, I think in your hydrology course, the hydrologic cycle is described. Is it described to you, hydrologic cycle?
Yes, sir.
This is your hydrologic cycle. So, I think one more slide I have. Okay, this is one. So here what happens, you can see here, this is all atmosphere, and these are the clouds. So and then this precipitation will reach the ground, first the surface, and also snow melt also reaches. So some amount gets evaporated, some amount gets transpirated. So that will reach back the ocean's atmospheric vapor storage, and the remaining water will flow here. So the rate of infiltration is a function of soil type, rock type, antecedent water, and time. What is infiltration? Infiltration means movement or percolation of water into the ground. So this is what is called as infiltration. So it moves in this form. So this is all called the soil moisture. So this will be going below the ground level. This is the ground level. Below the ground level. And there is what is called as a vadose zone and a capillary fringe and a saturated zone. So we'll discuss about these things a little later in detail. So the vadose zone includes all the material between the earth's surface and the zone of saturation. See, this is zone of saturation. See, when water enters the ground, so partly it will be filled because it contains soil. So partly it will contain the soil, water, and the roots of the plants and trees. So, and this is not 100% saturated. Whereas, if you go down, there will be a particular level below which it is 100% saturated, completely saturated. So this region above the saturated zone and the top of that is called as the water table. So what is water table? Water table is nothing but the level of saturated water in the ground, underground. So this is also called as, this saturated zone is also called, known as the groundwater reservoir. This is all groundwater reservoir. So because here groundwater is stored. So this groundwater reservoir. The capillary fringe is a layer of variable thickness that directly overlies the water table. Water is drawn up into this layer by capillary action. So only capillary action causes the movement of water from the saturated zone into it. So you can see this figure. Paths of water from slopes to streams. Now let us consider a terrain which is having a slope and there are a number of trees. So when water falls, the precipitation water falls on this surface, on this level, what happens? First, it directly flows in the form of groundwater and it reaches a river, a perennial river. So this is the direct groundwater flow. Direct groundwater flow. Then there will be, depending upon the porosity of the soil, just below the surface, ground level, normally which will be more coarse material or more permeable. So directly, while traveling in this path 1, some amount of water will escape that and it will directly flow. So that is indicated as 2, and that is called as shallow water flow, which will be almost parallel. This is the groundwater flow and this is the shallow through flow. So it is called as shallow through flow. Then of course, the overland flow. So the overland flow reaches the river in 2 types. A is saturated and B is rejected infiltration. That is unsaturated. So A is saturated ground. So from this saturated ground, some amount of water will reach in the form of overland flow. So this is how the water moves from the slope or overground and underground as well. Now there are certain peculiarities of groundwater. What are they? Normally it is free from pollution, but vulnerable to the pollution entering from the surface sources. So naturally, even groundwater, even surface water also is free from pollution at the exact source where the precipitation joins the river. But when the water flows over the ground and during its movement, it meets with certain contaminated material and it gets contaminated, polluted. So that is surface water pollution, contamination. Groundwater also same thing. See, groundwater is available at the top, at the bottom, below the ground. And if there are certain polluting material and if they flow through the ground strata and they may reach the groundwater and contaminate or pollute the groundwater. So therefore, the pollution will be due to the contaminants joining the groundwater. Then it can be made available on the surface at a small capital cost and in a short duration. What all you require is installation of a pump and a storage space, but involves a repetitive cost of energy for lifting it to the surface. See, initial cost will be less, but every time what you have to do, you have to switch on the pump. So therefore, the motor running cost, it will be more. So therefore, it requires energy or power, electric power. So it is costly. It is very useful for domestic purposes, for small towns and isolated places, since it requires minimum treatment. It is available up to a depth of 3 kilometers. In fact, the groundwater will be extending up to 3 kilometers of depth. It is not an unlimited source and hence has to be managed against excessive exploitation and contamination. See, As you have seen earlier here, out of this 4.04%, 1.05% is almost your groundwater contribution. So there is no limitation. So it is an unlimited source and hence has to be managed excessively, managed against excessive exploitation and contamination. Okay, I will stop here for 5 minutes and I will come back. Shown this is a pictorial representation of another type of representation which is called as an ephemeral stream, that is an influent stream. There is perennial stream and ephemeral stream. Ephemeral stream means it flows only during wet periods, that is flashy runoff. So in that case, this is how the groundwater will be flowing. So there will be a thin soil just below this, and there will be a rock below it, and there is water table. So normally this is semi-arid climate, slopes with sparse vegetation. That means the vegetation is not thick as we have considered earlier here. This is a humid climate and this is a perennial stream which is called as an effluent. In fact, in between this has come. This slide has come in between. So this is a ephemeral stream. So the ephemeral streams will recharge the groundwater. Whereas here they discharges groundwater. So groundwater will be flowing into the perennial stream. So groundwater is discharged into the river stream. So we were talking about the hydrologic cycle. So I think I need not reiterate this. So the basics that you already know are precipitation. What is precipitation, you know. The meaning of percolation, you know. Runoff, you know. Evapotranspiration, you know. The groundwater, surface water. And of course, the sources of drinking water are groundwater as well as surface water. Now, what are the groundwater terms? Zone of aeration, zone of saturation, water table, aquifer, confined aquifer, artesian. So these are some terms related to groundwater. So we'll try to explore what is the meaning of all these things and we'll try to understand what are all these things. Okay. So this, of course, I already have explained. This is the one that was a repetition. Not repetition, out of place there. That slide should come here. So if I continue from that, so the peculiarities of groundwater are normally free from pollution, made available at small capital cost, but running cost is more, operative cost is more, very useful domestic purpose for small towns and locations, and available up to a depth of 3 kilometers. It is not an unlimited source, hence to be managed against excessive exploitation. and it exhibits less fluctuations in alternate and wet and dry periods as compared to surface water. It is free from weeds, plant organisms, turbidity, and bacterial pollution. It is only polluted by contaminants entering into the groundwater from industries or other polluting sources. It is uniform in quality, temperature, chemical composition, and soluble mineral contents compared to surface water. Because there will be a lot of fluctuations in surface water. Whereas the groundwater is just like a stored water in your house in a drum or in a tank or in a overground reservoir. So therefore, the fluctuations will be less and the quality also remains the same throughout. It is this, I think, this is the one. Okay, same slide. Yeah. Now, let us go into the details of the various terms which I have introduced there: intermediate zone, soil zone. So that is explained with the help of this figure. Now, this is the surface ground level, and all water that is above this is surface water. And let us say this is a reservoir or a river or a lake. Okay. So this is all below below this bottom line of riverbed or lake bed, entire thing is groundwater. And if this is this river and lake, if there is no river, but if it is a ground, so then below that, unlike below the bed surface of the rivers and lakes, where the entire flow is completely underground water, it is groundwater saturated. Here you will have different zones. Now, they are divided into broadly unsaturated zone, as you can see here. This is unsaturated zone, and then a saturated zone. And in between, there is a slight zone or a small range which is called as a capillary fringe. Okay. So the unsaturated zone is divided into soil zone and an intermediate zone. And the saturated zone is divided between the groundwater reservoir. This is all called as the groundwater reservoir, and this part is the capillary fringe. Right? So vertical distribution. See, we are talking about the vertical distribution. Vertically, how the groundwater is distributed. So vertical distribution of groundwater is subsurface water is divided into two parts: aeration zone and saturation zone. This is unsaturated or aeration, and this is saturated. Now, the aeration zone is divided into soil water zone, intermediate zone, and capillary zone. See, this is unsaturated and capillary. So these two put together are called as aeration. So aeration means what? Aeration zone means what? Unsaturated zone plus your capillary zone. So, and in between you have an intermediate zone. So this is Of course, sorry. Soil zone, intermediate zone, and capillary zone. Soil zone, intermediate zone, capillary zone. These two put together see, this is your this zone. This zone. That is unsaturated zone. So this is unsaturated zone, this is capillary zone and saturation zone. So the same thing is shown here. See, are you able to see this? This is the ground surface and this is soil water and this is capillary. So this is saturated. So this is zone of saturation and this is zone of aeration. So zone of aeration is soil water, intermediate water and capillary water. So this intermediate water is also referred as pellicular and gravitational water. Pellicular and gravitational water. Now this called as suspended water. This is called as suspended water. Suspended water is soil water, pellicular water and capillary water. So these three put together are called as Vadose water. So that is also known as the this is called as pellicular. So the moisture diagram shown in the figure indicates the relative positions of soil water classes and equilibrium points. So saturation zone, in this zone, the interstices are partly filled with water and partly with air. So here, partly filled with water and partly filled with air. That is saturation zone. Soil water zone. So soil water zone extends from the ground surface down through the major root zone of vegetations. Its thickness varies with type of soil and vegetation. So soil water zone, this is soil water zone. So it extends from the ground surface and goes up to the root zone depth. So there will be roots of the plants extending below the ground level. So major root zone. So this is the soil water zone. Then intermediate zone. This is intermediate zone. So intermediate zone, this zone extends from the lower edge of the soil water zone. This is the lower edge of the soil water zone to the upper limit of the capillary. So this is the intermediate zone. This zone varies in thickness from 0. Sometimes its thickness may be 0. When the grounding zone merge with the height of water table approaching the ground to several hundred meters under deep water table conditions. See, if the groundwater is not available close to the ground surface, if it is very deep, so then it will be several hundreds of meters also. So this zone contains pellicular as well as gravitational water. So this is pellicular combined as well as gravitational water. Pellicular water means the water kept under suspension due to the uh, presence of roots and also partly capillary action. Partly capillary action. But whereas in the capillary zone, it is purely capillary action only. Now, do you remember what is capillarity? Suppose you take a tub and fill partly with water and insert a tube of small diameter, a glass tube of small diameter. Then what you will see that water rises above the water level in the tub. That is due to your surface tension. Basically, due to surface tension and cohesion and adhesion properties. So, if adhesion is more, then it will rise. So, therefore, that is the reason for the presence of capillary zone. Even there is no water in the soil water zone and intermediate zone, there will be some water present in the capillary zone because the underneath that groundwater table, water is there, and the pores of the strata above the groundwater table, the pores of the strata above this water table, that means the pores that are present in this region, so they exhibit that surface tension and properties of adhesion. Therefore, water will be rising. So that is how the capillary zone gets water. That's what is explained next. It extends, capillary zone extends from the water table up to the limit of capillary rise of water. So this all depends upon the capacity of the pores to allow the capillary rise, capillary height. So up to that they will rise. Now, let us try to understand certain technical terminology or technical words. Now, permeability. So, permeability, how is it defined? It is defined as the capability of a rock or soil to allow the passage of fluids. Permeability is dependent on the size of pore spaces and to what degree these pore spaces are interconnected. And it will also depend upon the grain size and the grain packing and the cementation effect of these particles. So all these things affect the extent of permeability. So the permeability is the capability of a rock to allow water or allow any fluid to that extent through it. And it depends upon the openings that are present, that is the size of the pores. Right? Then let us consider another term called as the specific yield. Now, what is the specific yield? Yield means the quantity that can be obtained from any source that is available. So, if you have a tank of water and if you just insert some vessel in it and remove that water, that is your yield. Now, how much water you can remove? You can remove depending upon your capacity of using that vessel and removing that water until the whole water is exhausted. Now, here there is a difference. See, here certain water will always be retained in the pore spaces. So, by gravity, how much water can be drawn or can move freely is what is known as specific yield. So, that means instead of taking out by external means, if the groundwater is allowed to flow through it under gravity, so how much quantity of water will be flowing? So that is defined in terms of what is known as specific yield. So specific yield is the ratio of the volume of water drained from a rock or soil due to gravity to the total rock volume or total strata volume. So that is the ratio. Total volume divided by, volume of water that can be allowed that can flow divided by the total volume, right? So grain size has a definite effect on specific yield. Smaller grains have larger surface area per volume ratio. If you have small surface means, small grain means you have large surface area by volume, which means more surface tension. So fine grained sediment will have a lower specific yield than a coarse grained sediment. So that is what you should understand. So a fine grained sediment will have a lower specific yield. If you consider sand and if you consider gravel, a sand pack and a gravel pack, a gravel will have more specific yield because of the grain sizes are more and also the openings are more. Whereas if you consider sand, you will have small size and therefore surface area by volume ratio will be large. Okay, right. Now specific retention. Specific retention is next to the remaining one. So you have certain volume. Out of that volume, you have removed certain volume that by gravity certain amount of water can flow. So certain other amount of water is retained against gravity. So that means it is retained within the soil strata or the rock, even though there is gravity. So that is called as specific retention. So if you consider the total specific yield and specific retention, that equals the porosity. Now what is that porosity? Actually, if you consider the total stratum, so that is the volume. Now out of that volume, what will be the amount of water present? The water will be present only in the space between the molecules, sand or soil particles. That means the openings of between the soil particles, which are called as voids. So only the voids that are present can be filled with water. So therefore, the total volume refers here, though the volume of the rock, but if you add the specific yield and specific surface, that equals the porosity. So that is the total possible volume by which water can be present. Out of that, we can get SY as specific yield, and SR is the retention. So, what is the total volume? The total volume is volume of the pores plus volume of the grains. So, that is total volume. So, therefore, you should not get confused between when I say total volume and air voids. Voids is definitely referred to the sum of SY and SR. So, let us further study about porosity and safe field. Now, porosity is always expressed as a percentage. So, it is ratio of openings, that is voids, to the total volume of a soil. So, if I say N is equal to VT, it is not in the subscript, actually, by mistake it is there, it was there like that, but it is VT minus Vs whole divided by Vt. 1 minute, how you can explain? I will tell you, 1 minute. Wait, my battery is going down. I will switch on. Are you seeing the equation which I have typed here?
Yes, sir. Porosity, volume of voids by total volume.
Huh?
Volume of voids by total volume.
Yes. Yeah. So it is Vt minus Vs by Vt. In the dark red color, I have typed the equation. Okay? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, okay. So, how the soils are classified? The soils are classified based upon the particle size. You can see here, gravel larger than 2 millimeters. Then very coarse sand between 1 millimeter and 2 millimeters. Coarse sand 0.5 to 1 millimeter. Then medium sand 0.25 to 0.5 millimeters. Fine sand 0.125 to 0.25. And very fine sand 0.07 to 0.125. And silt and clay finer than 0.07. It is not difficult to remember because half, see, gravel larger than 2. So very coarse sand is 2 to half of 2, that is 1. Then coarse is 1 to half of 1, that is 0.5. So like that you go on dividing, and when you come to fine sand, it is 0.125. So 125 divided by 2 is 0.625. So it is rounded off and it is referred as 0.7, not 7. Right? So that is the classification. So this is how the porosity is explained. See, if you consider the total volume of the soil is 1 meter cube. So out of this 1 meter cube, see, this is 1 meter, this is 1 meter, and this 1 meter. So out of this 1 meter cube, if you allow water to enter it, say, for example, 0.3 meter cube is the water. So therefore, what is your porosity? Porosity is, by your definition, VV by VT, volume of voids by total volume. So what is the volume of voids? 0.3. And what is the total volume? 1. So 0.3 divided by 1 expressed as a percentage. So 0.3 divided by 1 into 100. So that is 30%. So porosity is always expressed as percentage. Void ratio is expressed as a ratio. So both are same. Porosity and void ratio, both are same. So for different selected values of porosity, they are given here. Values in percent by volume. You can see soil 55%, clay 50%, sand 25%, gravel 10%, sandstone 10%, granite nothing, basalt 10%. I mean openings. Values in percent by volume. But this, more than this, I think I have a separate thing. Somewhere I have, okay, I don't have here. Now, how the porosity and permeability are interconnected? Now, let us consider this figure you are seeing here. Okay. So, porosity, the percentage of rock that consists of voids or openings. So, it is volume of empty space in rock, or wherever I say. 1 minute. Let me introduce what is known as hydraulic conductivity. Now, movement of groundwater depends upon rock and sedimentary properties of groundwater's flow potential. So, it is the potential, that is the capacity of the soil which can allow movement of water through it. So, porosity, permeability, specific yield, and specific retention are important components of hydraulic conductivity. So, hydraulic conductivity is indicated by capital K or P, mostly capital K. So, its units are velocity units, that is length per time or meters per day. So, how the hydraulic conductivity is defined? It is the ability of a particular material to allow water to pass through it. So, the definition of hydraulic conductivity denoted by K or P in the hydrology formulas is the rate at which water moves through the material. Rate at which water moves means it is the distance divided by time. So, internal friction and the various paths water takes are factors affecting hydraulic conductivity. Hydraulic conductivity is generally expressed in meters per day. Although it is length by time, meters per second, but meters per second is not the practical unit of conductivity. Practical unit is meters per day. We always indicate the hydraulic conductivity as meters per day. If you consider the flow through a pipe, we will say the velocity is meters per second. Whereas if it comes to groundwater, it will be meters per day. So in case of pipe flow, the entire water or entire fluid will be flowing without any obstruction. Whereas here in the groundwater, there are obstructions in the form of soil particles in between. So therefore, the free velocity will be definitely not be present. So it is obstructed by the presence of the soil grains. Now, let us consider the relationship between the porosity and void ratio. Now, the amount of water that can be stored in an aquifer is equal to volume of space between the soil grains. That is V. That is V. It is defined as the ratio of voids. Actually, here VP is used, but earlier we have used VV. Okay. So, it is defined as the ratio of voids, that is VV. You can note it as VV in the rock or soil to the total volume VT of the mass and is expressed as a percentage. This already we have seen. Now, coming to void ratio is nothing but the volume of pores to the volume of solids. So, it is the ratio of V and Vs. So, VV and Vs, ratio of VV and Vs. So, that is the difference between porosity and void ratio. Okay. Now, if you suppose add okay, no, not that. See, this is the relationship. N is equal to 1 divided by 1 plus E, 1 plus 1 by E. Now, all of you show this. All of you show this. Yes.
E by 1 plus C, no, sir.
Eh?
Porosity E by 1 plus C.
This you have seen, isn't it? So it all depends upon how the grains are packed. Porosity of a rock or soil is determined largely by the packing arrangement of the grains and the uniformity of the grain size distribution. The greatest ideal porosity that could be attained in a material with uniform spherical grains is 47.65%. This is known as cubic packing. This is this one. This is called as cubic or cubical packing. Whereas this is called as a rhomboidal packing. So here they are packed closely. So here it will be less. So it will be only 25.95%. Right? Now here is the porosity for certain materials. So type of material: limestone, shale, sandstone, gravel and sand, gravel, fine to medium mixed sand, uniform sand, like that. It goes on. Silt, clay and soils. So 50 to 60. That is the percentage. So this is a curve which indicates the variation of maximum percentage, maximum to percentage grain size and percentage. It is grain size to percent porosity. So if the grain size is less, you will have higher porosity. So this is specific yield and this is specific retention. So even if the grain size is increasing up to one stage only, the specific yield increases. Beyond that, it decreases. So this point you have to note. So I will be stopping here for today, and we'll continue again when we have the class according to your